Hi, everybody. It's Miss Lee, and today we are going to be talking about animal tracks, and then we're going to be making our own animal tracks in some salt dough. So we'll be creating that. But before we get to the actual hands-on portion, I thought it would be fun to first talk about different types of animal tracks and why they're important, what they can tell you, and we'll do a little bit of matching. If you have your worksheets, they came in the printable PDFs. They're optional. You could just do them together with me on the screen, or if you wanted to try to quiz yourself first and then check with me on the screen, I'll let you know when to pause the video for that, okay? So I'm going to bring up my screen and we're going to talk a little bit about what you can look for with different animal tracks. Here it is. Okay, so obviously different animals are all going to leave different kinds of tracks, and it does take a little bit of training to be able to tell what's being left behind by what animal. But just knowing what types of animals live in your area will help inform you and be able to help you guess what the tracks left behind might be. So you can look for them, especially in the winter. You can see tracks in the snow. After rain, you might find some in the mud, or you might even be able to find them in the drier dirt, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to see them. So the first type of track you might find would be something that comes from a hooved animal. So hoofs would be anything like a zebra, a horse, a deer, especially if you're in New Jersey like I am. You would be able to see them left behind from a deer. I see them all the time in my yard. So they have over their feet a protective covering. That's the hoof. It's made out of something called keratin. It's similar to the proteins that make up your hair and also your nails. So think of it as like really, really thick nails that have layered on top of each other. And most of the hooved animals, it's actually like they walk up on their toes, on their tippy toes that are protected by those nails. So here's an example of a fossilized hoof print. So you can see this one has essentially like having two toes. Some hooved animals have different numbers of toes. So this one has two, left a really defined footprint. But you could also see next to it, there are some paw prints as well. So a different kind of animal, a much smaller animal, was also walking nearby where this was left. So that brings us to the animals with paws. So these are going to look much different. Paws are more similar to your hands. They're softer, but they have pads on there. And some of them, like this bear right here, you might even be able to see the claws or their nails left behind in their paw prints. So it kind of depends on the animal because some of them, they cannot retract or pull back their claws. So in the case of a bear, I don't believe they can. So you're going to see those nails in their footprints. But if you look at the lion, if you look really, really closely at your screen, you could tell that their nails don't always reach the ground. So they're like a cat. They can kind of relax and pull their nails in or flex them out. So can the tiger over here. I believe the only cat that can is a cheetah. And then we have a wolf over here who would leave paw prints very similar to a dog. So if you have a dog at home, next time you take them on a walk outside, if you walk them across some mud or some dirt, you can take a look and see if you can find their paw prints. So here's a set that was left behind in the snow. Okay. Even though we typically think of birds flying, they're also going to leave some prints behind when they walk along the ground. And the type of prints they leave behind in the sand might be able to tell if sand, mud, dirt, sorry, I keep saying sand, but wherever they leave them, it might give you a little bit of information about what type of bird it is. So if it's something like this goose or this duck that lives by water and does a lot of swimming, sorry if you can hear my pod cat in the background, they leave a lot of webbed footprints. So they have skin between their toes that helps them swim. It helps them be more efficient in water. Whereas something like this guy here, this is a predatory bird. So they have more like what we would call talons. They have really sharp nails and they're not webbed because they don't do much swimming. So here's a set of bird prints that were left in the sand from, I believe, a seagull. Okay, now that we have seen some different types of prints, we're going to look at some different examples and see if we can match them up. So this is where I said if you printed out the PDF, you can have that and try to match them first. So I would pause here and give yourself a chance to try to match the prints to the animals. If not, you could just come ahead with me and we will look at the ones on my screen together. So I'm just going to turn on my annotate pen and we'll look at these together. So the animals we have a choice from for these first ones, we have either a squirrel, we have a horse, a dinosaur, or a little Jack Russell Terrier, a dog. So let's look at this first set of prints. So I made it a little tougher by not making them the right size, because obviously that would be a pretty big giveaway. So we have first this set of paws. Looks like they have very soft pads. So what do we think these belong to? Okay, horse have hooves, and I don't think this little dinosaur here would have a very friendly set of soft paws. So these belong to our dog. Okay, our next set of prints, soft paws, but then they also have little tiny nails and what look like longer toes. So they actually use those toes and those nails to help them climb trees. So if we're looking for something that climbs trees, that brings us to our squirrel. Okay, the next set, this is our only set of hoof prints. So these must belong to our horse. And then we have the last ones, these 3 long toes, super sharp claws belong to our dinosaur. Very good. So let's try one more set on the next page and see if we can match these guys up. So first one, long, skinny feet. I'll give you a hint. They help them stay above soft grass and snow, but also gives them like a good jumping board for hopping. So which one of these animals hops? Okay, that would obviously be our rabbit here. Okay, the next two I think can be a little bit tricky, but if you remember what I talked about with retracting and non-retracting claws, so this one right here has the claws out. So this belongs to our brown bear over here. So then there's one more left that has paws. And this one, again, if you look really closely at the toes of your lion, I don't see his nails down on the ground. So these belong to him. And this last one, this has webbed toes like I was talking about. So that must belong to our goose over here. So if you've ever been out on Sandy Hook, you'll probably be able to see some goose prints, but there's actually one other thing that people use to help track animals and find them. So aside from their footprints or paw prints, you might also find scat, which is basically their poop. So if you've been to Sandy Hook, you probably would be able to find out where a goose was last. So they leave a lot of that behind as well. But all those things can help people like hunters that are trying to find animals, trying to find food to hunt. And also even somewhere like Africa, if you go on a safari, they actually have trained people that sit in the front of the truck and they look for prints and they're able to tell how fresh the prints are, what animal they belong to. Sometimes they do look for stool or scat and figure out when the last time the animal was there that was crossing paths with you. So it's all really useful information. So what we're going to do now is create our own salt dough. So let me grab mine and I'll show you what my dry set looks like first, and then we will get to mixing ours together. Okay, so I made a set of 3 of these already. I made one with a small hooved animal. So obviously we're using little plastic animals. So the detail might not be as good, but you can see the little hoof prints there. And then I also did it with, well, another animal that had, oops, there we go, larger hooves. And then I also did a dinosaur. So you could see, let me get an angle where there's no glare. You could see the 3 big toes from my T-Rex over here. So it looks very similar to the velociraptor that we saw in the other pictures in the slideshow. Okay, so I did provide in the kit a couple little animals you can use, but you can also look around your house and see what you have. If you have some dinosaurs, so this could also be like you're creating fossils, because fossils of footprints show up all the time, and it's just because over time, wherever those footprints were, they dry out, they mineralize, and they do become solid, and you can figure out what kind of animal passed through that area. So what you will need from your kit, you will need your flour and salt. So I'm going to make a slightly smaller batch than what you guys have in your kit. I cut mine down a little bit just because I have made so much salt dough in the last couple days that I don't need much more. But it's already portioned out for you. So however much flour you have half as much salt. So that is the correct proportion. Aside from that, the one thing that's not in your kit that you'll need is water. So you'll need, for you guys, about 3/4 a cup of water, but we won't add it all at once. So we're going to mix our dry ingredients first. So take a bowl, whatever kind of bowl you want to put it in. You'll dump your flour and your salt, and you are going to mix them together. You can use a spoon if you want. Eventually, you're going to have to get in there with your hands, so I'm just going to do that from the very beginning. So if you're mixing with your hands, just be mindful, maybe don't touch your computer or your device right now while your hands are messy. So just make sure you are mixing up your dry ingredients really well. And then I would start by adding about half of your water. So we'll just add water a little bit at a time until we feel like we have a Play-Doh type consistency. So it's easier to add water a little bit at a time because you can't take water out once you've added it. You could add more flour and dry ingredients, but we already measured that out. So we don't want you to have to go digging through your kitchen cabinets to find it. All right, so that's why we always do a little water at a time. Good, so I'm just getting right in there with my hands and mixing it. It's going to feel like you're making bread. So you'll kind of want to like knead it and squish it in your hands a little bit. So let me add a little more water, and I'm going to tilt my camera down so you don't have to look at my face. You can look at my beautiful salt dough that I'm making. Good, so I'm just going to keep mixing, trying to scrape up all the little ends. So you just want to feel for the right consistency. If it's crumbly like mine is, we've not added enough water yet. But if it starts to get too sticky, you might have overdone the water. So that's why mix it really, really good before you add the next splash of water. Yeah, it's getting there. You can use 2 hands. I'm trying to use one so that I can also man my computer if I need to. But if you have 2 free hands, you can dig right in there. All right, so it's getting there. It's sticking to my fingers a little bit, so I just need to get that off. But I'm making it into a nice little ball. That's exactly what we want. Like a nice ball of bread dough is what it looks like. There you go. So this seems like a pretty good texture. It's not too dry and crumbly, but it's not too sticky. Like I can handle it without it sticking to my hands. So that's important. If it's too sticky, it won't make nice footprints. All the dough will just stick to your animals. So what you're going to do is you're going to decide how many animal prints you would like to make. So I'm going to make 2. I have my zebra and my dinosaur. So you can decide based on the animals you have. You could even use other figures. Like if you have other action figures and you want to make their footprints, you could even make your own handprint or footprint if you have enough dough and just kind of compare. So what I would do is however many sets of prints you're planning to make, break it into that many balls. So you're going to roll it up. and flatten it out into a pancake. So you can just use your hands for this. I'm going to roll it into a nice ball and press it down. The thinner you make your pancake, the faster it will dry. The thicker it is, the longer it's going to take. So either way, it will dry eventually. You can even help it along in the oven at a really low temperature, about 170 degrees, I've seen, for about 2 hours. Or if it's a nice warm sunny day, leave it out for the day. So I'm going to flip it over so I have the nice flat side here. So you want to try to avoid having all your own prints in there, unless that's the type of print you're doing. So unless you're doing your hand print. So when I press it against my nice flat surface here, once I have it to the thickness that I want it just a little thinner here. I'm going to flip it over so I have one nice shiny side over here. All right, so the next thing you're going to do once you have your little pancakes is you are going to walk your animal through it and leave some footprints. There you go. So press nice and gently and evenly. You could see them come out there. And if you wanted to, you could even, if you wanted to get creative, maybe try to do some hands. If you have a dinosaur like this, you could even try to do like the face or the body and leave a print in there like you're making some really nice fossils. And then I also have my zebra over here. I'm going to walk them through and leave some prints. If you wanted to make one of your own prints, you could even press that in there. So this is totally open-ended. It is up to you how you want them to go. So if you're going to dry them, just like air dry them, it probably will take a full 24 hours, if not more, if they're very thick. Otherwise, I will leave some directions in the PDF as well, but I believe 170 degrees Fahrenheit in the oven for about 2 hours, but check on it frequently will help it along as it's drying. So once it's dry, you can leave it as is, or you can also paint over them to try, or you could even just try to paint just the print if you have a small brush. But in order to do a good job of these, you do need acrylic paints, which are not in your kit. So that's an optional thing. And acrylic paints can be a little tough to work with because they're not washable. So you have to be a little extra careful with the mess that you make. Okay, but so it does take a little bit of patience before you have your final product. But when you're done, you'll end up with some nice, really cute salt prints that look like fossils. And the one note, if you have dogs, I do recommend that you leave these out of their reach. They will eat them like their food. They don't taste good, so I don't recommend it, but dogs don't care. And the high salt content can be dangerous for dogs. If they ingest it, if they eat it, they could get sick to their stomach. They could get pretty sick from all that salt. So their body's not meant to handle that. So that's just my one safety note. Keep it in a microwave somewhere out of, or a cabinet somewhere out of their reach if you have a big dog. I have a big dog and the counter is not safe for me. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed your project. If you'd like, you can email me and share what you made, and I would love to see your progress. Okay, have a great day. Thank you.